A young couple sat on a bench in an autumn park. It was already getting dark. Night came earlier with each passing day. The streetlights hadn't yet flickered on. The sky hung low, as if you could reach out and touch the leaden clouds. The park trees admired their reflections in the puddles, and they had much to be proud of. The red, yellow and brown leaves of maples, ash and aspen trees still clung to their branches, making them look elegant. The air was rich with the scents of damp earth, recent rain, wilted grass and fallen leaves. Mary McLaughlin had once read that autumn carried a heavy smell of rotting leaves. It sounded strange and unpleasant, yet it felt wonderful. Mary drew in the autumn scent deeply, filling her lungs. She had always loved autumn. There was a special cosy romance to it. The way leaves rustled and crunched underfoot. How store counters overflowed with bright pumpkins and figs. The house owners brought in plums, apples and pears from their gardens, eagerly sharing their excess zucchini. Mushroom hunters returned with baskets full of porcini and chanterelles. Mary loved baking fragrant apple pies this time of year, adding cinnamon, vanilla, and her secret ingredient, love. She enjoyed watching old romantic comedies with Julia Roberts or Jennifer Lopez, or better yet, curling up in a plaid blanket with Jane Austen novels. Mary also cherished her walks, watching people transform as they pulled out plaid scarves, coats and trench coats from their closets. In winter, the city's inhabitants thought only of warmth and comfort, bundling up in down jackets and funny hats. But in autumn, they still allowed themselves to be beautiful. Mary wore a lovely coat herself. She'd found it last spring at a sale, heavily discounted, blue with turquoise speckles, the last one left and miraculously in her size. It seemed meant for her. After bringing it home, she'd spent ages admiring herself in the mirror. When her older sister saw her, she laughed, saying Mary looked like a quail's egg painted for Easter. But Susan quickly added that it suited her beautifully. Mary had imagined herself walking through autumn puddles, everyone else in brown, grey and black, while she'd be gloriously speckled, bright and beautiful. Yet today, wearing it on her date with her fiancé, she felt no joy. Perhaps she was simply too tired to feel anything at all. Now, after a mere half-hour walk in the nearby park, Mary and Dylan sat on a bench, each holding a coffee cup. They sat in silence. Dylan had already shared his news, and Mary had nothing to report. Her life had become Groundhog Day, and while Dylan seemed unwilling to discuss her sister, or so Mary thought, he suddenly spoke. "You know, Mary, it's not fair." Dylan broke the silence. "What exactly?" Mary furrowed her brow. "Everything that's happening." He nodded toward the autumn park, where leaves danced along the paths. "Look, I stayed quiet while you were going through the tragedy. I was there for you. But it's been 6 months. Nothing's changed." Mary understood his meaning. A cold stab of pain shot through her chest. "Dylan, sorry, but what exactly should have changed?" she asked, maintaining her composure. "My sister, who's confined to a wheelchair, should have jumped up and run? What did you expect? I've been honest with you from the start. My older sister is disabled. That's a fact. It can't change. There's no cure, no magic pill to grow her new legs." The young woman's voice dripped with sarcasm. Dylan's frown deepened as he stared at his unfinished cold coffee. "I thought this was temporary. I thought our relationship would go back to normal. We should be planning our wedding by now, talking about kids, moving in together. And instead, now the wedding's on hold. I see you once a week if I'm lucky. You're always tired, always worried about your sister. You have no time for me. What if we had kids? Would you just fall apart?" The man paused, took a sip of coffee and wrinkled his nose at the taste. He jumped up, poured the rest of the drink into the bushes, and threw the cup into the trash. He didn't sit back down on the bench, but began to march back and forth, muttering about everything that had come up. "Think of yourself. You're 25. You've taken on too much. Mary, now you're running around like a squirrel in a wheel. You don't have time to live. You're running to school early in the morning, then giving private lessons to rich brats who don't even like music. All this just to pay for your sister's day caregiver and medication. You cook at night, take care of her yourself. And so it goes on and on. Aren't you tired? It's a lifetime." Mary shivered as if blown by the wind, though it was quiet outside. "I don't understand." Mary's voice sounded distracted, her thoughts coming with difficulty, probably from sleeplessness. "What are you suggesting, Dylan? Give up on—" The word "not fair" kept beating in her head. What did he know about fairness? Tall, healthy, raised in a full and happy family. What did he know? Nothing. That's why he couldn't understand her. The man took a deep breath and exhaled. "You know, Mary, I'm sorry, but—" Dylan blurted out, avoiding his bride's eyes. "I didn't sign up for this. Put your sister in some hospital or nursing home. Otherwise, we're through." Mary didn't flinch, didn't even blink. She was so tired, so exhausted, that she didn't have the strength to cry or despair. Besides, she knew this would happen, knew from the moment Dylan stopped coming to her house, knew when he began looking at her older sister with dislike, even disgust. Of course, Dylan tried to hide his emotions, but he wasn't very good at it. "Okay," Mary nodded. "You're right. Let's break up." Dylan pressed his lips together. Those beautiful, full lips that Mary had loved to see smile, had loved when they kissed her cheeks in the morning. Now they belonged to a stranger. His expression had become somehow childish, ridiculous. Dylan had lost all vestiges of masculinity, transforming into a disgruntled, hurt child. "Are you sure? Are you choosing her, not me?" the man demanded. Mary sighed, taking a sip of coffee. She'd chosen a seasonal drink offered by the smiling barrister, a cappuccino with maple syrup. It was very sweet. Mary licked her lips. "You know, I don't really have a choice," she said softly. "She's my sister. She's the person who raised me, nurtured me as a child, held me in her arms, was beside me all my life. All my life, Dylan. She's my blood, my flesh, the closest person I have. Everything I am now is because of her. You are essentially nothing to me, Dylan." The man recoiled, his cheeks reddening. "Mary, I proposed to you. I could have been your husband, the father of your children. We'd have been a family. I really loved you," Dylan said tearfully, intentionally or not using the word loved in the past tense. Mary sipped her coffee again. She used the drink as an opportunity to consider her answer, to pause. She didn't want to hurt her fiancé, pardon, ex-fiancé. But she was also hurt, offended, and it was difficult to suppress. "No, you couldn't have," Mary said, picking at the sticker on the cardboard cup with her short fingernail. "I have to trust my husband, Dylan. How do the registry office workers say before sending a ship of love into the sea of life? Do you agree to be together for better and for worse, in health and in sickness? It seems our ship of love has crashed on the rocks of difficulties before even leaving the dock, Dylan. But you know what? It's good. Because if we had children, or if something like this happened to me, Could I count on your help? Now it seems to me that no.
You'd be my family, like our children. I would give you everything.
Dylan rushed to defend his honour.
And your sister? She's nothing to me. I don't want to be responsible for someone else's life forever, or support her. I'm not a charity for the disabled.
Dylan's words sounded crude. Mary frowned, clutching her cup with chilled fingers. She took the last sip and stood up too. You know, I never asked you to do that. I've never even asked you to take the wheelchair down from the floor. And you never offered. The former lovers looked at each other. Dylan did not recognise his cheerful romantic bride in the pale woman with circles under her eyes. Mary did not recognise her fiancé in the embittered man before her. I think there's no point in discussing anything else, Dylan. Mary shook her head. I don't want to clarify our relationship either. We're talking about something I cannot change. I will never leave my sister. I won't give up on her. If you truly knew me, you would understand immediately. Mary threw the glass aside. She slipped off her engagement ring, pressed it into Dylan's hand, and walked away. Dylan remained rooted to the spot, his angry gaze burning into her back.
Mary, you'll come to your senses, he shouted. When you're left alone with your sister, living as two old maids, you'll remember me, but it'll be too late. No one will accept you with an invalid. She'll be your burden for life.
Mary didn't turn around. She walked leisurely down the park street, hands tucked in the large pockets of her marvellous coat. Ahead of her, as if lighting her path, the street lights flickered on one by one. They made a strange sound, like chirping grasshoppers, before flaring up. Mary took this as a good sign. Some would say it all began with a rainy spring day and a traffic accident that divided the sisters' lives into before and after. Susan was confined to a wheelchair, and Mary became her sister's caregiver. But no, the story began even earlier, with Mary's birth. She was born into a broken, incomplete family, never knowing her father. He was likely one of her mother's drinking companions. The girl's mother drank herself to death after losing her first husband. Susan was perhaps luckier than her younger sister. She still remembered life in a happy, loving family, eating tasty milk porridge for breakfast, riding on father's shoulders, listening to bedtime stories. Yet Susan also knew the pain of losing everything. Their father fell ill and passed away. Their mother couldn't handle the grief. First came the hospital stays and medication. At home, she sought the peace at the bottle of a bottle. Helen McLaughlin began drinking on weekends. She worked at a store, 2 days on, 2 days off. Soon she started drinking in the evenings after work. Then she began showing up at work smelling of alcohol. Her boss, understanding her situation, tolerated it for a while before finally laying her off. Helen survived on widows and unemployment benefits, sinking deeper into despair. People saw that Susan's mother was drinking. Teachers noticed too, but stayed silent. No one intervened to help Susan. After all, she was clothed, fed, and living with her mother. Even such a mother seemed better than an orphanage. Truth be told, Helen loved her daughter in her own way. In her sober moments, she'd braid her unkempt hair into a bun, try to care for Susan, and show interest in her studies. They'd bake pies together. Susan would believe everything had changed, until she'd come home from school, spot unfamiliar shoes by the door, smell tobacco, and hear laughter from the kitchen. Then her mother would transform back into a monster, slurring her words, wearing that strange, ridiculous smile, with flushed cheeks and glassy eyes. Then came Mary, small and sweet as a doll. Susan loved her instantly, wholly, taking her under her wing despite being a child herself. At just 10 years old, but she was already behaving like a real mother. In truth, she became Mary's mother. As Susan grew older, her greatest fear was that they'd be sent to an orphanage. If anyone realised how badly they lived, the sisters would be separated. It was obvious that someone would definitely adopt tiny sweet Mary, but no one would take the older Susan. That's why Susan always protected her mother. Whenever inspection authorities were coming, she cleaned the house, disposed of cigarette butts and empty bottles, and aired out unpleasant odours through open windows. Hope occasionally tried to pull herself together. She even looked for work, but never kept a job for long. When things got really bad, the sisters would cuddle together in bed and dream. Mary would whisper to her sister, "When I grow up, I want to sing, or play the piano or violin. I love music so much. Though I also love our teacher. She's so sweet. I want to teach children too. What should I choose?" "Why choose? You can teach children music," Susan encouraged her younger sister. Susan praised her little sister for loving such wonderful things, then shared her own dream. "And I want a house, a big house filled with people, but not the kind who visit Mummy, you know," the eldest sister confided. "I want my family to live there, people close to me, my husband, my children, maybe when I'm old, my grandchildren too, and the children's voices will echo through it always." Mary frowned. "Will I be there?" the child asked. Susan smiled broadly and sincerely, tickling her little sister. "Of course you will. Of course you will. If you want to spend your life with your sister when you grow up." Hope passed away when Susan was 19. By then she had already been working at a nearby store since finishing school, having foregone higher education. Susan took custody of Mary. People fussed and pitied them, overwhelming Susan with concern. "It will be hard for you," they said. But Susan stayed quiet. She knew the bitter truth. When their mother was gone, life actually became easier for her and her sister. Susan was responsible and hard-working. She quickly advanced from cashier to administrator, and within just a year became senior administrator. Susan studied extensively, immersed herself in the business, and eventually earned an interview for the store manager position. As her career flourished, Susan remained both mother and sister to Mary. Recognizing her sister's love for music early on, Susan enrolled her in free piano lessons at school. Mary's talent immediately shone through, impressing her teacher. When Mary graduated, it was her sister who embraced her at the ceremony, who paid for her hairstyling and prom dress, who worried as she applied to the conservatory. She even accompanied Mary to her interview and subsequent creative and professional tests, waiting anxiously in the hallway. Mary found success, though not as the next Mozart. She became a music teacher and gave private lessons, earning a comfortable living. She even composed her own pieces, though she rarely shared them. Their small family then faced a new chapter. Susan married Jake. Mary served as bridesmaid and played Mendelssohn's Wedding March as the couple walked down the aisle. She couldn't hold back her tears of joy, hoping her wonderful sister had found happiness. Mary remained in their mother's apartment, which Susan had renovated, while the newlywed moved in with her husband. Then Mary met Dylan. It seemed the sisters' dark days had ended, replaced by brighter ones. But this was merely the calm before the storm. That night Susan and Jake visited friends at their country house. They planned to stay overnight, but Jake quarrelled with the host. He got into the car while intoxicated. Susan pleaded with him, tried to dissuade him, offered to call a taxi, but Jake lost his temper, shouting at his wife to get in the car and leave with him. Later, Susan realised that Jake had reminded her of her mother at that moment. The fear overwhelmed her reason, and she got in. Jake lost control of the vehicle. He was lucky, escaping with mere scratches. Susan wasn't as fortunate. While her friends expressed sympathy for her tragedy, they quickly disappeared from Susan's life, unwilling to deal with her circumstances. But the deepest betrayal came from her husband. He packed his belongings, bid his wife farewell, and vanished without a trace. He left a ring, divorce papers, and some barbed words. "I want a family, a full-fledged family. I don't know if you can have children, and if you can, how will you raise them? And then, you don't think I don't realize it's all my fault. I look at you and the guilt gnaws at my bones. I can't live like this. I'll go crazy if I stay," said the man. "But you do realize that the apartment is mine, right? So get out of it as soon as possible." So, Susan was left alone, or rather, she stayed with Mary again, who had taken her home the same day Jake had left. Mary was having a hard time, not because she was working more or taking care of her sister, but because Susan had closed herself off. Brave, strong, beautiful and proud, she was fading away. She sat at the window in her wheelchair and looked at the sky. Mary smiled naively, cooed, chatted with her sister, but in vain. Susan did not even smile back. And then Dylan left their lives, and at this moment Susan spoke. Returning home that fall evening, Mary took off her coat and put on a smile on her face. She said goodbye to the caregiver, learned how they had spent the day, then walked over to her sister and kissed her on the cheek. "You're quick," Susan said. "It's cold out there," Mary replied with deliberate cheerfulness. But Susan was too close to her sister not to catch the change. She squinted and looked at her sister's hand. The woman often noticed the glitter of the ring in artificial light, but now the finger was bare. "What's wrong?" she asked, sighing nervously, then covered her eyelids with humility. "It's because of me, isn't it?" "No. Don't lie to me. You don't make me feel better with this, Mary. I know it's because of me." Tears flashed on Mary's eyelashes. Mary sat down in front of her, touched her knees. "Hey, I'm not lying. It's not because of you, but because of him. Do you understand? He was the one who failed. He was cowardly. I don't care. We're not meant to be together." Susan shook her head stubbornly. "Stop it, Mary. You don't have to ruin your life. Give him back. I can manage on my own. How many people are there like that? I may not be able to walk, but I still live. It was hard at first, but now I'm getting used to it. Honestly." Mary took her sister's hands in her own, feeling how thin her fingers had become. "I'm glad to hear that you feel better, but I'm not ruining my life, okay? I'm worried about you, yes, but I'm never going to leave you, ever. And not because you've taken care of me since I was a baby, Susan. Not out of pity, not out of duty. Only because I love you like a sister, like a friend, like a mother." And then Susan burst into tears. She heard the words she needed. She heard that someone needed her, even a disabled person like her. Mary hugged her for a long time, stroking her trembling back, whispering words of comfort. She swore that they would get through this, and everything would be all right. When Susan calmed down, Mary brought her mint tea. The woman took the mug, warmed her palms against it, and looked around. The momentary outburst seemed to have brought her to her senses, pulled her out of her depression. Her green eyes filled with tears again. "Damn it! Honestly, I've dreamed of escaping this apartment my whole life. Despite the renovations, it hasn't changed for me. I still remember more than you do. I can't even breathe in here. And in the end, I ended up coming back here," she whispered. "It's like everything I'd accomplished has gone back to zero. A mockery of fate." Mary looked around too. Then her memory brought forth a conversation with a woman whose daughter she taught vocal and piano, and suddenly it hit her. If she and her sister were cartoon characters, a light bulb would surely appear over Mary's head. Mary opened her mouth to voice the thought that had invigorated her, made her blood boil, and then she bit her tongue. It wasn't time yet. No need to raise her sister's hopes. She'd have to find out first. That night, Mary loved autumn again. She loved it because the house began to fill with the scent of cinnamon and sugar. An apple pie appeared on the table, which they had baked together. The sisters, wrapped in the same plaid, ate it with vanilla ice cream, watched Pretty Woman, and then turned on Runaway Bride, enjoying Richard Gere's looks and feeling a little jealous of Julia Roberts' charm. And then Susan fell asleep on her shoulder, with her legs hidden by the plaid and a satisfied blush on her cheeks. She looked just like before. Mary lay awake for a long time, wondering whether she would be able to fulfill her sister's dream. It must be possible. After all, once, long ago, Mary had sacrificed everything to help Mary fulfill her dream. The next day, Susan announced that she would study online to become a web designer. "I've been creating a website for a store, so I'm interested in it, and I noticed that there are free courses for people with disabilities. It's also the perfect job for me, because I'm always in a chair," she giggled over breakfast. Mary was happy looking at her sister. She only hoped that her enthusiasm would not fade too quickly. Mary went straight to Diana. The woman was surprised to see the music teacher at the door. "Do you and Angela have classes today?" she asked, dressed in her silk robe as usual. Diana was happily married and enjoyed the benefits of such a marriage. There were rumours that her husband was cheating on her, but she easily turned a blind eye to it. Perhaps the brand name handbags and jewellery got in the way of the view. "I'm sorry I'm not here about Angela. Remember when you mentioned having a piece of land in the village? The unwanted one?" "Yes, from my grandmother." The woman nodded, wrinkling her nose. "To be honest, I can't stand that place. I remember how my mother sent me to my grandmother, and she made me work from dawn till dusk. Since then I can't even have a flower at home, unless it's artificial. The earth makes me sick, and there's a swamp nearby, with so many mosquitoes." The woman's throat was dry. "Could you sell it to me? And if possible, on credit or in instalments. I would teach your daughter for free. I would train her for competitions. Please, I really need the land." The request surprised Diana. She was essentially a kind woman, and she liked the teacher. Diana enjoyed taking her to the kitchen after class and, while pouring tea and something stronger for herself, gossiping and complaining about life. She hadn't planned to give away the land, though. "Why do you need it?" The woman frowned. Mary was frank and told everything honestly. By the end of her story, Diana could hardly hold back her tears. "You know what? Let's make a deal," she said decisively. "I'll give you that unfortunate plot with the hut. Do whatever you want with it. I'll draw up a deed of gift. And you, as we discussed, will teach music to Angela for free. At least until she loses interest." "No, I couldn't accept such a gift." "You know what? My husband buys absolutely hideous paintings at charity auctions. He says it's the way of helping people and improving the world. Can't I do something nice too? I don't even like that place, and you need it so badly. It's settled. It's yours to fix up and build on," Diana said firmly. "Now, let's go to the kitchen. I've been saving a lovely bottle of sparkling wine. This is the perfect moment. And you know, Mary, I feel strange, almost light-headed. It's been so long since I've felt such joy." Mary tried to dissuade Diana, saying she would try for a mortgage for the land and construction, but Diana wouldn't hear of it. It was clear that Diana herself was thrilled with her idea. After the paperwork was complete, Mary received the plot of land. She worked even harder to get it in order before bringing Susan there. Mary asked her sister to close her eyes, rolled her wheelchair outside the gate and said, "Open up." Susan cautiously opened her eyelids and saw a garden with bare trees and an old house. "What's this? Why have you brought me here?" she asked in surprise. Mary's chest swelled with warmth. "To our home, Susan. Our home. Here we'll build a big house. Everything will be just as you dreamed." Susan only realized she was crying when breathing became difficult and her vision blurred. But these were tears of joy. Was it hard for the sisters? Of course it was. They both worked tirelessly and invested everything in the construction. Brick by brick, they built their dream. One weekend, while the sisters were working on their plot, they met their neighbour, Nelson. He was a sailor who had bought the adjacent plot, planning to build a summer house and bathhouse there. After months at sea, he yearned for the woods and land. Nelson's dog bounded onto the sisters' plot and rushed to Susan, covering her face with kisses. The man, embarrassed, tried to quiet his affectionate dog. The woman laughed, clear and genuine. And Nelson fell in love. He fell for her pure laughter and smile, for her green eyes, the colour of summer grass. That Susan couldn't walk didn't even register to him. Was it difficult for him to carry the woman he loved in his arms? Not at all. Fate had more surprises in store. Nelson had a younger brother, Vince. When he came over for barbecue, he saw Mary bringing homemade pies to the table. Later, as they sat by the fire, he picked up a guitar, and Mary sang. Well, Vince had no chance of not falling in love. Soon the brothers were helping the sisters build their house. The fence between their plots came down, along with any other obstacles to happiness. Many years passed, and Susan's dream came true. In the garden, among apple and pear trees, stood a large and beautiful house. It was filled with people, her family, the ones closest to her heart. Her children and nephews lived there, and she knew her and her sister's grandchildren would too. Children's voices would echo within these walls for generations to come. This was where true love lived.